At my son's funeral, his wife humiliated me and threw me out of the house I built with my own hands. My name is Richard Hale, and what happened next changed everything. Imagine this for a moment. Your child has just died. You're drowning in grief. Then your daughter-in-law looks you straight in the eye and says, "Stop crying, pack your things and get out of my house now." She called me a useless burden in front of mourners, right there at my son's funeral. But here's what Melissa didn't know. The house she was forcing me out of, I built it in 1987. The money she believed she had inherited, $850,000, and it was never hers. For 8 years, she lived comfortably off my generosity while treating me like a charity case. Instead of arguing, I walked away. Because sometimes silence is the strongest response of all. If you're new here, hit subscribe. I share stories about standing up to disrespect. And trust me, you'll want to stay until the end. Because what Melissa discovered 3 days later taught both of us a brutal lesson. Assumptions can cost you everything. Let me take you back to the beginning. The warning signs were there early on. I just chose not to see them. When my son Andrew died in a car accident 2 months ago, Melissa immediately took control. "Don't worry about anything, Richard," she said. "I'll handle the arrangements." What she really meant was, stay out of my way. At the funeral home, she made every decision, the casket, the flowers, even the music. When I suggested Andrew's favorite song, the one we used to play while building this house together, she cut me off. "That's too depressing," she said. "We need something more uplifting." I watched her command the room in her $300 black dress, directing people like she was producing a performance. And me, I sat quietly in my old gray suit, the same one I'd worn to my wife Alina's funeral 2 years earlier, feeling completely invisible. The second sign came during the reception in my house. My house, though Melissa had already started treating it like hers, she pulled me aside in the kitchen. "Richard, we need to talk about your situation." "My situation? You're financially dependent now," she said. "Andrew was supporting you, and with him gone," she shrugged. "I can't carry that burden." Burden, that word landed harder than she realized. "I've been generous letting you stay here," she continued. "But this house is mine now, everything is. Andrew left it all to me." I nodded. Melissa mistook that nod for surrender. What she didn't see was strategy. She didn't know Andrew had never owned this house. He lived here, grew up here, loved it here, but ownership never. She also didn't know about the filing cabinet in the basement, 4 drawers of neatly organized financial records going back 40 years. My CPA and I believed in documentation. Most importantly, she didn't know about the trust, but I'm getting ahead of myself. To everyone else, Melissa looked like the perfect picture, a confident real estate agent taking charge during a crisis. And I looked like a confused old man who couldn't manage his affairs. I sat quietly in Andrew's old recliner, the one I bought him for his 16th birthday, while she told people her version of the story. "Richard's struggling," I heard her tell our neighbor Karen Whitmore. "He never understood finances. Andrew handled everything for him." Karen glanced at me sympathetically. She'd known me for nearly 4 decades, since the day I broke ground on this property. Even she seemed unsure now. That's when it hit me. People see what they expect to see. Melissa expected a broken widower who couldn't survive alone. So that's all she noticed. The old Honda I drove, the simple clothes I wore, the quiet way I carried my grief. She mistook humility for weakness, silence for surrender, generosity for desperation. It was an easy mistake. Since Alina passed, I'd chosen a simple life. No need for luxury when you're learning how to be alone again. Andrew respected that. Melissa didn't. She measured value by noise, appearance, and control. She was about to learn something important. The most dangerous person in any room is the one who doesn't need to prove anything. As the final guests left that Tuesday evening, Melissa stopped me near the front door. "I meant what I said, Richard. This arrangement isn't working." I looked around the living room I'd painted 3 times over the years, the hardwood floors I installed myself, the crown molding Andrew and I cut together when he was 12. "I understand," I said calmly, but she had no idea what I truly understood, and she had no idea what was coming. Wednesday morning brought coffee and clarity. I sat at the kitchen table Alina and I bought at a garage sale in 1986 and made a list, not of what I was losing, but of what Melissa thought she was gaining. The house, 240 square feet on Maple Street in suburban Cleveland. Market value, $420,000 according to her own estimates. Andrew's life insurance policy, $150,000. She was already mentally spending it, new furniture, redecorating, replacing memories. Margaret's antique china cabinet, Andrew's engineering textbooks, worthless to her, priceless to me. But what hurt most wasn't the money, it was the erasure. She was removing every trace of the life Alina and I built here, photos gone from the mantle, Andrew's childhood drawings removed from the fridge. Even my CPA certificates disappeared from the den wall. "I'm redecorating," she said casually. "Andrew always said this place needed updating." updating, as if 40 years of memories were outdated software. She gave me 30 days. 30 days to leave on what she assumed was Social Security alone. 30 days to pack up a lifetime. She even printed a timeline like I was a tenant. November 15th, she said, pointing to a red circle. That should be enough time to find a senior community more appropriate for your situation. That phrase again, she pulled out brochures. Sunset Pines has studios. Only $800 a month. $800, my entire Social Security check. What about food, I asked. Medical bills, transportation, she shrugged. There are programs, food assistance, Medicaid. The government takes care of people like you. People like you, that's when I understood. Melissa didn't just want me gone, she wanted me grateful for the privilege. She wanted me to thank her for giving me 30 days instead of nothing. What she didn't know was that she had just made the biggest mistake of her life. To be grateful that she hadn't called the police to remove me immediately. To accept that this was simply how life worked now that Michael was gone. But on Wednesday morning, sitting at the table with my coffee and my handwritten list, a different realization hit me. Claire had made one fatal assumption. She believed Michael owned everything she was claiming. She had been married to him for 8 years. She had lived in this house for 8 years. And in all that time, she had probably never seen a deed, a mortgage statement, or a single document proving ownership of anything. Why would she? Michael handled the finances just as Susan and I had raised him to do. The man takes care of the money. Old-fashioned, maybe, but it worked for us, except Michael had never handled my finances. He helped around the house, sure. Brought groceries when I needed them. Drove me to doctor appointments after Susan passed away. But the money, the investments, the property, the accounts, that was always mine to manage. Claire saw Michael's kindness and assumed dependency. She saw my gratitude and assumed obligation. She saw 2 years of quiet mourning and assumed defeat. And I asked myself something important. If I stayed silent, if I packed my bags and quietly moved into Willow Ridge like a well-behaved senior citizen, what message would that send? That bullies win, that loud voices overpower truth, that confidence is enough to rewrite history and steal someone's life. That respect becomes optional when you're dealing with the elderly. That my 40-year marriage to Susan meant nothing. That the home we built together was just wood and concrete. That the son we raised here could be erased as easily as photos lifted from a mantle. This wasn't just about money anymore. It was about identity. And I had something Claire didn't know about, something that could change everything. I just needed the right moment to use it. That moment arrived sooner than she expected. Thursday morning, Claire let herself into my house using Michael's key. I was eating breakfast when the front door opened. No knock, no greeting. She walked in like she owned the place, which in her mind she already did. "Henry, we need to talk," she announced, marching into the kitchen with a manila folder tucked under her arm. "About what?" I asked. "Your finances." She sat down across from me without asking and opened the folder, pulling out a legal pad filled with her handwriting. "I've been reviewing your situation," she said. "I need to understand exactly what Michael was paying for you." I took a slow sip of coffee. "Utilities, property taxes, insurance," she continued, flipping pages. "Michael never gave me exact numbers, but I need them so I can budget properly." "Budget for what?" I asked. "For taking over those payments," she replied, as if it were obvious. "Until you move out, I'll be covering whatever Michael was covering." I placed my coffee cup down carefully. "And what exactly do you think Michael was paying?" "Everything," she said firmly. "The mortgage, the taxes, the electric bill. You're on a fixed income, Henry. Social Security doesn't stretch that far." "Is that what Michael told you?" Her pen stopped moving. "What do you mean?" I said calmly, "did Michael ever actually tell you he was paying my bills?" "He didn't need to," she snapped. "It's obvious," she gestured around the kitchen. "How else could you afford to live here? This house is worth over $400,000. "And how do you know that?" I asked. "I'm a real estate agent, Henry. I know property values in this neighborhood. But you've never seen the deed." The question hung in the air like smoke. For a brief moment, her confident expression wavered. "I don't need to see the deed," she said quickly. "Michael inherited this house when your wife died." "Did he?" "Of course he did. Who else would inherit it?" I stood up slowly and walked to the sink, rinsing my coffee cup with deliberate care. "You've made a lot of assumptions about my finances," I said. "They aren't assumptions," she replied. "They're facts." "Really?" I turned back toward her. "What other facts do you have?" She glanced down at her notes. "Michael told me you never contributed a single dime to this house." I looked at her steadily. "Is that what Michael told you?" "Yes." "Interesting," I said. "Because I built this house in 1987, I paid cash for the land. I hired the contractors, I supervised every single day of construction." Her face tightened. "That was 37 years ago," she said. "Things change." "Some things don't," I replied. "Ownership doesn't." She crossed her arms. "Henry, I know this is hard for you, losing Michael, facing the reality of your financial situation, but denial won't help. What denial? I asked, pretending you're not dependent on family charity. The word charity hit like a slap. I dried my hands slowly on the dish towel. Claire, let me ask you something. What, in 8 years of marriage, did Michael ever show you a mortgage statement? We kept our finances separate. Did he ever mention making house payments? We didn't discuss every expense. Did you ever see him write a check for property taxes? Her silence answered for her. So here's what I think happened, I said, leaning against the counter. Michael helped me with groceries, errands, and yard work, and you assumed that meant he was financially supporting me. That's what it looked like. Appearances can be deceiving. She stood up sharply, frustration written all over her face. Fine, she snapped. Then show me the deed. Then prove you own this house. I don't have to prove anything to you. Yes, you do, she snapped. I'm Michael's widow and I inherited everything. Did you? Stop answering questions with questions. Stop making assumptions. We stood there, facing each other across the kitchen. Claire's jaw was clenched, her polished real estate agent composure beginning to crack. You have until November 15th, she said at last. After that, I'm changing the locks. We'll see about that. She gathered her papers and turned toward the door. We'll see about what? She demanded. I didn't answer. I simply smiled and began loading the dishwasher. Some conversations are better finished with lawyers in the room. Friday afternoon, I did something I hadn't done in months. I went down to the basement. That basement had always been my refuge. Susan used to joke that I was like a squirrel down there, storing documents and receipts the way other people stored food for winter. You never know when you'll need proof, I'd tell her. She'd roll her eyes and remind me that normal people didn't keep 40 years of bank statements. But I wasn't normal people. I was a CPA and I'd learned early that paper trails tell stories, and stories protect you when memories fade or when people lie. The filing cabinet stood exactly where I'd left it, 4 drawers, each labeled by decade. Each folder categorized, every document filed in strict chronological order. It was beautiful in its own quiet way. I opened the bottom drawer first. The 1980s, the decade that changed everything. Inside was the folder I needed. Real estate, 447 Maple Street. Yes, 447. The house number Claire believed was now hers. The first document was the original land purchase agreement. March 12, 1987. Buyer Henry Lawson, price $43,000 for the lot. The second document was the construction contract. Mitchell & Sons Building Company, no relation, just a coincidence. Cost: $78,000 for a custom colonial. The third document mattered most. The original deed recorded March 15, 1987. Owner, Henry Lawson, no cosigner, no joint ownership, no mortgage. Paid in full. Claire had no idea. In 1987, she'd been 4 years old, probably learning how to tie her shoes while I was learning how to read blueprints. But that wasn't all. Insurance policies, property tax receipts, utility connection agreements, every one of them in my name, every one of them paid by me, 37 years of uninterrupted ownership. Michael's name didn't appear anywhere. I opened the second drawer, the 1990s. More of the same, property taxes paid annually by Henry Lawson, insurance premiums paid quarterly by Henry Lawson, even landscaping receipts all mine. The 2000s told the same story, so did the 2010s. And the most recent file from 2024. But the real surprise waited at the very back of the bottom drawer, inside a folder labeled Trust Documents, Private. This was the folder Claire definitely didn't know existed. Inside were papers that would change everything. The first document was a trust agreement dated June 15, 1985, before Michael had even been born. The Henry and Susan Lawson Family Trust. The second document was a bank statement. Current balance as of October 31, 2024, $853,412. The third document listed the beneficiaries. Michael's name was there, but not as an inheritor. He was listed as a lifetime beneficiary, subject to specific terms and conditions. Terms and conditions Claire had never bothered to ask about. The trust was complicated like these things always are, but the structure was simple. Susan and I were the original trustees. After her death, I became the sole trustee. Michael received monthly allowances for education, housing assistance, and family support, but ownership never left the trust, which meant it never left me. Michael lived comfortably because I made sure he lived comfortably. The engineering degree, the wedding expenses, the opportunities and investments that came his way, all of it flowed from the trust. All of it remained under my control. Claire saw Michael's lifestyle and assumed independence. She saw his generosity toward me and assumed it came from his own earnings. She never considered the truth that the money flowing from Michael to me was actually my money finding its way back home. That's how assumptions work. You see what fits your expectations and ignore what doesn't. Claire expected young, successful couples to support aging parents. So when she saw Michael helping me, she assumed dependency. She never imagined I was the one helping him. But there was one final document in that folder, the one that would matter most when truth finally arrived. Michael's life insurance policy. $150,000, just like Claire said, but the beneficiary wasn't Claire. The beneficiary was the Henry and Susan Lawson Family Trust, which meant the beneficiary was me. Claire had been spending money that was never hers, planning a future on resources she didn't own. Building certainty on a foundation that didn't exist. I closed the filing cabinet and went back upstairs. In the kitchen, I made myself a sandwich and thought about timing. Claire had given me until November 15th. Today was November 1st, 2 weeks. I could call her immediately, lay out the truth, watch her certainty collapse in real time, or I could wait, let her keep assuming, let her dig deeper, let her learn the lesson the hard way. As I ate, I remembered something my old business partner used to say. Henry, sometimes the best negotiation strategy is letting the other person talk themselves into a corner. Claire was already doing exactly that. The only question was how deep I wanted to let her dig before I stopped her. I looked around the kitchen I'd designed 37 years ago, the cabinets, the countertops, the windows I'd measured and ordered, my house, my trust. My decision, Claire was about to learn that respect isn't negotiable, but first she needed to finish digging. This is Henry, Michael's father, Claire said brightly. He's the original owner, but he's transitioning to a more suitable living situation. Transitioning. Like I was changing careers. Mr. Lawson, said the blonde agent, smiling politely, your home has so much character, you must have put a lot of work into it. Some, I replied. Claire tells us you'll be moving to Willow Ridge, another agent added. I've heard it's very nice. I looked at Claire. Is that what I'm doing? We discussed this, Henry, she said. November 15th, remember? I remember you discussing it. An uncomfortable silence fell over the room. The three agents exchanged uneasy glances. Well, the blonde one said carefully, we should probably let you get ready for church. Actually, Claire cut in, since everyone's here, maybe Henry could tell you about the maintenance issues. The roof leak, the furnace problems. There's no roof leak, I said evenly, and the furnace is 2 years old. Henry, you know the upstairs faucet drips and the basement gets damp in the spring. The faucet needs a 50-cent washer, I replied. And the basement has been dry for 20 years. Claire's smile tightened. Henry's very attached to this place, she said to the agents. Sometimes he doesn't see problems that are obvious to others. Problems like what? I asked. Like the fact that you can't afford to maintain a house this size anymore. The room went quiet, even the agents looked uncomfortable. Can't afford it? I repeated. Henry, we've been through this. Your Social Security barely covers basic expenses. And you know this how? Because I'm not blind. You drive a 15-year-old Honda, you clip coupons, you haven't updated anything in this house since the Clinton administration. One of the agents cleared her throat. Maybe we should reschedule. No, Claire said sharply. Henry understands the situation. He's had 2 years to adjust since Susan passed. What situation? I asked. That you're a 70-year-old man on a fixed income who can't manage a 24-square-foot house anymore. 68 actually, I said, but go on. The point, I interrupted, is that you're making assumptions about my finances. They're not assumptions, she snapped. They're observations. Observations about what? That you've been living off Michael's generosity for 2 years, and now that he's gone, you need to face reality. The words hung in the air like tear gas. The agents were clearly looking for an escape route. Michael's generosity, I repeated. Yes, he paid your property taxes, covered utilities, made sure you had groceries and medical care. Did he? You know he did. And you know this because I was married to him. I saw him writing the checks. What checks? Her face flushed. The checks for your expenses. Did you see him write checks to the county for property taxes? He handled things online. Did you see him pay my electric bill? He transferred money to your account. Did you ever see bank statements showing those transfers? We kept our finances separate, so you never actually saw any proof. The blonde agent stepped forward. Claire, this feels very personal. Maybe we should give you some privacy. No, Claire said. This needs to be said. Henry, you cannot keep living in denial. What denial? That you're anything other than a burden. The word echoed in the room. Even Claire seemed surprised she'd said it out loud. A burden, I said quietly. I'm sorry, she replied, voice sharp, but yes, you've been a burden since Susan died. Michael was too kind to say it. Too kind to say what? That supporting you was bankrupting him. Bankrupting him? Yes, property taxes alone are $8,000 a year. Add utilities, maintenance, your medical expenses. Michael spent at least $40,000 last year keeping you afloat, and now he's gone and you expect me to take over that burden. The agents were edging toward the door. So you're throwing me out, I said. I'm giving you a month to find appropriate housing. That's generous. Generous? Yes, because frankly, Henry, you never contributed to Michael's success. He built his own life, earned his own money, bought his own house. This house. Yes, this house, Michael inherited it from Susan, and now I inherit it from Michael. That's how inheritance works. I nodded slowly. I see. Good, finally. One thing, I said calmly. You might want to check your facts before saying things like that in front of witnesses. She laughed. What facts? I'm a real estate professional. I know how ownership works. Do you? I asked. Better than I do, apparently. I turned to the three women near the door. Ladies, you might want to ask Claire to show you the deed to this house before you start planning renovations. Claire's face went white. Henry, don't what? I asked. Tell the truth, but I'd said enough. Enjoy your tour, I said, heading for the door. I have a lawyer to call. Monday morning, I sat in attorney Eleanor Collins' office. 3 manila folders rested on her mahogany desk. Eleanor Collins, no relation to my late wife, had handled my legal affairs for over 20 years. She adjusted her glasses. Henry, I have to ask. Are you sure you want to proceed? I'm sure. Once this starts, there's no going back. Claire will learn everything. Good, she opened the first folder. The original deed to 447 Maple Street, she read. Henry Lawson, sole owner, recorded March 15, 1987, no cosigners, no mortgage. Correct, she opened the second folder. 37 years of property tax records. All paid by you, correct. Insurance policies, utilities, maintenance contracts, all in your name, correct. She opened the third folder and paused, and this is the big one. The Henry and Susan Lawson Family Trust. The documents were thick, dense, decades in the making. Current balance, she asked, $853,412 as of last Friday. And Michael's status, lifetime beneficiary. Never a trustee, never an owner. Eleanor leaned back slowly. Henry, this is a substantial estate. Claire had no idea. None, and Michael never explained it to her. He knew I helped him, he just didn't think to explain where the money came from, so she assumed he was supporting you. Exactly. Eleanor shook her head. Understandable, I suppose. Young couples don't usually have trust like this behind them. The irony is almost poetic, I said. She kicked me out of my own house using my own money to threaten me. How so? Michael's life insurance. $150,000. She's been planning with it for months. But the beneficiary is the trust, which means the beneficiary is me. Eleanor picked up her calculator. So Claire believes she inherited a $420,000 house and $150,000 in insurance. That's right. But in reality, she inherited nothing. Correct. And she's been treating you like a charity case while planning to spend nearly $600,000 that was never hers. I nodded. Exactly. I tried to be grateful that she hadn't called the police and had me dragged out on the spot. I tried to accept that this was simply how things worked now that Ethan was gone. But that Wednesday morning, sitting at the kitchen table with my coffee and a handwritten list, something finally clicked. Melissa had made one massive assumption. She believed Ethan owned everything she was claiming. They'd been married for 8 years. She'd lived under this roof for 8 years. In all that time, she'd likely never laid eyes on a deed, a mortgage statement, or a single document proving ownership of anything. Why would she? Ethan handled the money just like his mother and I had taught him. In our family, the man managed the finances. Old-fashioned maybe, but it worked. What Melissa didn't know was that Ethan never handled my finances. Yes, he helped around the house, picked up groceries, drove me to medical appointments after Helen passed. But the money, the investments, the accounts, the property, that was always mine. Melissa saw Ethan's kindness and mistook it for financial support. She saw my appreciation and assumed obligation. She saw 2 years of quiet mourning and mistook it for surrender. If I said nothing, if I packed a suitcase and shuffled off to Willow Ridge Senior living like a compliant old man, what would that say? That bullies win. That confidence matters more than truth. That if you're loud enough, you can rewrite someone else's life. That old people don't deserve respect. That my 40-year marriage to Helen meant nothing. That the home we built together was just wood and brick. That the son we raised here could be erased as easily as framed photos removed from a shelf. This wasn't just about money, it was about identity. And I had something Melissa didn't know, something that could flip everything upside down. I just needed the right moment. That moment arrived sooner than she expected. Thursday morning, Melissa let herself into my house using Ethan's spare key. I was finishing breakfast when I heard the door open. No knock, no greeting. Richard, we need to talk, she announced, marching into the kitchen with a manila folder tucked under her arm. About what? I asked calmly. Your finances. She sat down across from me without asking. I need to understand exactly what Ethan was paying for. I took a slow sip of coffee. Utilities, property taxes, insurance. She flipped open her folder. Ethan never told me the exact numbers, but I need them so I can budget properly. Budget for what? I asked. For taking over those payments, obviously, until you move out. I set my cup down. And what exactly do you think Ethan was paying? Everything, the mortgage, taxes, electric. You're on a fixed income, Richard. Social Security doesn't stretch that far. Is that what Ethan told you? Her pen froze. What do you mean? Did Ethan ever say he paid my bills? He didn't have to, it was obvious. She gestured around the room. This house is worth over $400,000. And how do you know that? I'm a real estate agent, I know this neighborhood, but you've never seen the deed. The silence that followed was sharp. I don't need to, she snapped. Ethan inherited this house when your wife died. Did he? Of course, who else would? I stood, rinsing my coffee cup slowly. You've made a lot of assumptions, Melissa. They're facts, really. Because I built this house in 1987, paid cash for the land, hired every contractor myself. Her jaw tightened. That was decades ago, things change. Ownership doesn't, she exhaled sharply. Richard, I know this is hard. Losing Ethan, facing reality, but denial won't help. What denial? Pretending you're not dependent on family charity, the word stung. Did Ethan ever show you a mortgage statement? I asked. We kept finances separate. Did he ever mention making house payments? No, property tax checks, silence. So you saw him help me and assumed that meant he supported me financially. That's what it looked like. Appearances lie, she stood abruptly. Fine, show me the deed. That Sunday, Melissa returned, this time with 3 real estate agents in tow. This is Richard Hale, Ethan's father, she said brightly. He's transitioning to more suitable housing. Transitioning, like I was changing jobs. One of the agents smiled politely. Your home has such character. Melissa says you're moving to Willow Ridge, another added. I turned to her. Is that what I'm doing? We discussed this, she said tightly. You discussed it, I corrected. Then she tried to sabotage me, listing imaginary maintenance problems, implying I couldn't afford upkeep, calling me a burden in front of strangers. A burden, I repeated quietly. Yes, she said. You've been one since Helen died. Ethan spent $40,000 last year keeping you afloat. The agents looked horrified. And now, she continued, I'm not picking that up. So you're throwing me out. I'm giving you 30 days. Be grateful, I nodded. You might want to check your facts before saying things like that in front of witnesses, she laughed. I know how property ownership works. Do you? I turned to the agents. Before planning renovations, you may want to ask Melissa to show you the deed. Her face drained of color. I left without another word. I had a lawyer to call. Monday morning, I sat across from attorney Elaine Brooks, 3 folders neatly arranged between us. Are you sure? She asked gently. I am. She opened the first folder, deed to 447 Maple Drive, Richard Hale, sole owner. Second folder, tax records, all mine. Third, the family trust. Balance? She asked. 853,000. And Ethan, never an owner, only a beneficiary. Elaine leaned back. Melissa had no idea. None. And the life insurance, trust beneficiary. Elaine smiled grimly. So she inherited nothing. Correct. The next morning we walked into Prime Choice Realty. Melissa looked up and froze. We need to talk, I said calmly. Elaine stepped forward. I'm attorney Elaine Brooks. We need to clarify some misconceptions. What misconceptions? Melissa snapped. The one where you believe you own a house that was never yours. Elaine placed the deed on the desk. This property belongs to Richard Hale. The room went silent. Melissa's confidence collapsed in real time. This isn't possible. It's documented, Elaine said, and just like that, the truth filled the room she'd poisoned with lies. Attorney Elaine looked up. And what exactly does that mean? She opened the third folder. The Richard and Helen Hale Family Trust, she said calmly. Current balance $853,412. The office fell completely silent. During his lifetime, Elaine continued, Ethan was a beneficiary of the trust. Richard provided financial support for Ethan's education, his wedding, and various needs over the years. Melissa's voice trembled. You're saying Richard was supporting Ethan? I'm saying Richard supported his son using his own resources, Elaine replied evenly. Melissa collapsed back into her chair. But Ethan told me he was helping Richard financially. He was helping practically, I said, groceries, rides to appointments, yard work. I helped Ethan financially. Melissa's eyes widened. The life insurance, she said suddenly. Ethan's life insurance, that's mine. Elaine slid another document across the desk. The beneficiary of Ethan Hale's life insurance policy is the Hale Family Trust. No, Melissa whispered. Yes, Elaine said gently. That money belongs to the trust, and the trust belongs to Richard. Melissa looked around the office. Every agent was staring. The woman who had been so confident on Sunday, so sure of her inheritance, so dismissive of an old man's words, now looked impossibly small. Richard, she said quietly, I didn't know. You didn't ask. You could have told me. You could have asked with respect. Elaine closed the folders. Melissa, you have 30 days to secure alternative housing, she said. The same timeline you gave Richard. But where will I go? Melissa asked. That's no longer Richard's concern, Elaine replied. You're a capable adult with a career, I'm sure you'll manage. Melissa looked at me with something I'd never seen before. Respect, I'm sorry, she said. I made assumptions. Yes, I said, you did. Can we work something out, some kind of arrangement? The office was silent as I considered her question. Respect isn't negotiable, I said. It never was. I understand that now. Do you? Yes, good, that's the first step toward earning it back. Elaine and I headed toward the door. Richard, Melissa called after me. What happens now? I turned back. Now you learn what I've always known. What's that? That quiet people aren't weak, we're just selective about when we speak. And with that we left. The silence behind us said everything. By Thursday morning, the story had spread through Cleveland's suburban real estate circles like wildfire. I knew this because Linda Parker, my neighbor of 37 years, brought me coffee and gossip. You should have seen Melissa at the grocery store yesterday, Linda said, settling into Helen's old chair. She looked like she'd seen a ghost. How so? For one thing, she was shopping in the clearance aisle. Melissa, who never bought anything unless it was name brand. Linda stirred her coffee, and she was alone, no real estate entourage. Busy day, maybe. Or people are keeping their distance now that the truth is out. Linda had always understood social dynamics better than most. What truth? I asked, though I already knew, that she spent 2 months treating you like a charity case while planning to spend money that was never hers. Linda shook her head. People are talking and not kindly. What are they saying? That she showed poor judgment, that she made financial assumptions without doing basic research, and in real estate that's unforgivable. She leaned in. Her broker called her in for a meeting yesterday. That's news. My niece works at Prime Choice Realty. The whole office has been buzzing since Tuesday. She lowered her voice. 3 clients have already requested different agents. Why? Because if Melissa couldn't figure out who owned the house she lived in for 8 years, how can she be trusted with theirs? That made sense. Real estate runs on competence and credibility, and she'd publicly demonstrated neither. There's more, Linda added. That young couple she was meeting when you walked in, they posted about it online. Said they dodged a bullet with an agent who doesn't understand property law. The ripple effects were moving faster than I expected. My phone rang. Elaine, we have developments, she said. Good or bad, perspective dependent. Melissa hired an attorney. She did. He's asking about a settlement. She wants to stay 6 months instead of 30 days, offering rent. How much? $2,000 a month. I almost laughed. Market rent is closer to $3,000. I told him we'd consider reasonable offers. And reasonable is $3,500 per month, first and last up front. Plus 1 month's security. So $10,500 to move in. Correct. Can she afford it? That's not our problem. Her attorney implied it might be difficult. After I hung up, Linda studied me. She wants to stay. She wants a discount. I'm offering fairness. Linda nodded. Fair is fair. Friday afternoon brought another visitor, Jason Miller, one of Ethan's old college friends. I owe you an apology, he said at the door. For what? For believing Melissa. She told everyone Ethan was supporting you, and you believed her. I did, and I'm sorry. I should have known better. Jason shifted. Ethan always talked about how proud he was of you. How you built this house, managed your investments, taught him responsibility. So why believe her? Because it fit the stereotype, he admitted. Old widower, grown son helping out. Assumptions again. Yeah, a lot of us made them. And now we're wondering what else Melissa misrepresented. That was telling. Her credibility was collapsing fast. Saturday morning, Elaine called with the final update. Melissa can't afford the rent, she said. She's moving out. That was expected. There's more. She's also leaving Prime Choice Realty. Leaving? Voluntarily, let's call it mutually agreed. House and job gone in the same week. Elaine paused. Do you feel bad? I looked around the kitchen. Helen and I designed together. No, I said. Melissa made choices. She chose cruelty over kindness, assumptions over questions, humiliation over respect. I agree, Elaine said. This isn't revenge, it's accountability. Sunday morning, I sat in church thinking about forgiveness and boundaries. I realized they weren't opposites, they were partners. I could forgive Melissa for her assumptions and still hold firm boundaries about respect. I could forgive her cruelty and still expect her to face the natural consequences of her choices. Forgiveness didn't mean pretending nothing had happened. It meant accepting what had happened and moving forward with clarity and wisdom. Melissa was moving out the following weekend, and I was moving forward with a deeper understanding of my own quiet strength. Sometimes the most effective lesson you can teach someone is allowing them to teach themselves. 3 weeks later, I was sitting in my living room, reading the Sunday paper when the doorbell rang. Melissa stood on my porch holding a cardboard box. Hi, Richard. Melissa. I found some things that belong to you, she said softly. Photo albums from when Ethan was little. Some of Helen's recipe cards. I opened the door wider. Come in. She placed the box on the coffee table and slowly looked around the room, the same room she once planned to gut and redesign. It looks the same, she said. Why wouldn't it? I replied. I don't know, she admitted. I thought after everything you might change things. Some things don't need changing. We sat quietly for a moment. Richard, she said, I owe you more than an apology. You don't owe me anything. Yes, I do. I treated you terribly. I judged your life, your finances, your worth. I was cruel when I should have been grateful, she swallowed. And now I understand something I should have understood from the beginning. What's that? That Ethan learned his values from someone, his kindness, his generosity, his quiet strength. She looked at me. He learned those things from you, I nodded. He was a good son. He was, she said, and you were a good father. I just couldn't see it because I was too busy making assumptions. We all make assumptions, I said gently. What matters is what we do when we learn we're wrong. I'm trying to learn from this. Good, she stood. I found a job in Columbus, new city, fresh start. I want to do better. I hope you do. At the door she paused. Richard, can I ask you something? Of course. If I'd been respectful from the beginning, if I'd asked questions instead of making demands, would things have been different? I thought for a moment. Probably, I would have helped you find your footing. Given you time, maybe we could have honored Ethan's memory together instead of fighting over it. She nodded slowly. So respect really isn't negotiable. No, I said. It never was. Thank you for teaching me that. After she left, I opened the box. Ethan's baby photos, Helen's handwritten recipes, small treasures that had somehow ended up in the wrong hands. I thought about the last 3 months, the funeral, the confrontation, the legal resolution, the consequences. Melissa had learned a costly lesson about assumptions and respect, but I had learned something too. I learned that quiet strength doesn't mean silent acceptance of disrespect. I learned that boundaries aren't walls, they're guidelines for healthy relationships. And most importantly, I learned that sometimes the most powerful thing you can do is simply tell the truth and let people face the results of their own choices. Ethan would have been proud of that. Helen would have approved of the quiet way I handled it. And me, I was finally at peace. If you're watching this and you've ever been underestimated because of your age, your calm nature, or your humble lifestyle, let me know in the comments. Have you ever had to remind someone that respect isn't inherited, it's earned? Sometimes the best response to disrespect is simply proving people wrong. And sometimes, the most powerful people in the room are the ones who don't need to prove anything at all. Until next time, remember, quiet doesn't mean weak, it just means selective.